Hi everyone, welcome to a new video on the CBI channel. And this video is part of a tutorial series on how to use Google Maps APIs within your Python Django application. This is the fourth and the final video inside of this series. In the first video, we already configured our Google Cloud and our Django application so we can use the APIs from Google. And in the previous two videos, we also geocoded address strings to coordinates and done some distance calculations between two locations. And in this video, we're going to be focusing on placing markers on the map. And it's going to look like this. On our homepage, we have a link that goes to our map. And when we go there, we will see all of the locations that are inside of our locations model displayed on a map. So we're going to actually take data from our database and display it right here. And in addition to that, we will also be able to click all of the markers so we can see the names attached to the different location points as well. So we can display a little bit more information. If you want to follow along with this tutorial and place markers on a map, make sure to also watch the first and the second video inside of this tutorial series, because we're going to be using information from there to make this work. In the first video, we've already configured the Google Cloud Platform and our Django application, which is needed to actually use these APIs. And on this map, we are displaying coordinates, and we're doing that for the locations that we have geocoded in the second video of the tutorial series. To place these markers on our map and getting these info windows, we're going to follow 5 steps. We're going to start by creating a view, a template, and a URL for our map. Next, we're going to add that map to our template. We're going to customize some of the map options so you can see what is possible. And then we're going to place all of the markers. And after the markers are successfully placed on the map, we will also create those info windows so we can display some additional information. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a URL, a view, and a template for the page where we're going to display our map. So I'm going to start in our urls.py file. I'm going to create a new path called map. And this is going to correspond to the map view that we will create in a minute. And I'm going to call this my map view. Next up, we're going to go to our views.py file. And here we're going to create a new view, which you already saw previously. We're going to create it and call it map view. And this is going to be a regular view. And in there, we need to define which template that we want to display. Well, I'm going to go for a template called map.html that we will create in a minute. And I'm also going to define our get statement, which takes self request similarly to my other views. And I'm just going to return context here, which is not going to have anything at this moment. And then I'm going to copy this one because I'm going to return render. And I'm going to say that I want to take my template name and my context to there. All right. Now the last thing that we are missing is an HTML page because currently map.html does not exist. And to make sure that we have one, I'm just going to copy my home.html file, call it map.html, and on the title say Google Maps API displaying markers on the map. And I'm just going to delete all of the content that we have on our homepage because that's not going to be that relevant for now. I am going to create a link to my homepage. So I'm going to say my home view, go to our homepage. And on the home.html page, I've also included a link which goes to my map view, which says go to our map. So that we can also go to the map page from our home menu. And now if we start our server, you can see that we have an extra link saying going to map. And when we get there, we have this empty page that says we're going to display markers on the map. And we can go back to our home page. And that is the first part done. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add some things to our project code to be able to display the map inside of our application. And if you take a look at the documentation of the Maps JavaScript API, one of the first things that you will see is that they include a script for polyfill. And this script makes sure that the map can actually be rendered in our HTML page. And this means that we need to include it in our project as well. So I'm just going to copy over that script. I'm going to go to my code and I'm going to include it on top of my map.html file. Now, in this case, I also have a base.html file, so you also can put it there. It's even a little bit better. But just so you can see everything that is required to display a map, I will put it here for the sake of the tutorial. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to define the place where our map needs to be. So in this link holder here, I'm going to create an additional div. And I'm going to call this class equal to map holder, because it is going to hold my map. And inside of here, we're going to put another div. And this div is going to, in the end, hold my map. And in this div, we're going to create an ID named map. And later on, we will refer to this ID, so Google knows where to place this map. Now, we also need to include a script underneath here. And this script is going to make the call to Google's API and make sure that it returns our map. And you can also find this key in the documentation here. So I'm just going to copy it in this case, because typing it out is going to be quite some work. And you can see that's equal to maps.googleapis.com, and it requires your API key, and it states a callback to init map. And init map is going to be the function that we're going to create, which is going to get our map and make sure that we can configure all of the things that we need to put inside of there. So I'm going to copy the script. I'm going to replace my attempt to the script here with the script that Google has provided us with. And the thing that we now need to change here is we need to make sure that our key is included as the API key. So to do that, we need to go to our views, and in our get statement, we can define that we need to pass the key to our templates. And we have gotten our key before, because that is going to come from our settings, because that's where we store our API key. So we do settings.Google API key, and this will get the value inside of our settings file, which we've done in the first video of this tutorial. If we go back here, you will see that our Google API key is equal to our environment variable, where we have stored this API key because it's sensitive information. And now in our view, we can put this key inside of our context. Key is going to be equal to key. And by putting it in our context, we can now use it in our front end. So then we're going to go back to our map, and we're going to replace your API key with double squarely brackets and put in key. And this will put our key inside of this URL. Okay, so we have now made sure that we have the technology to display the map. We also have the script that's going to make the call to authorize us and return everything we need for this map. But the last part is we need to actually configure the map. And we're going to do that inside of another script. So all the way up here, I'm going to initiate another script. And in this script, I'm going to define a function called initMap, basically meaning initialize the map. And you can see here, initMap, it's also inside of our callback. So for this function, I'm just going to open these brackets and do it like this. The first thing that we need to define is our map, actually. So our map is going to be equal to new google.maps.map with a capital. And then we're going to state document.get element by ID. And that is going to be equal to map. Now, what is happening here? We're basically saying our map is going to be equal to this function from Google, which is going to return us the map. And we need to put the map in the location where my map is specified. And you can see here that on the bottom, I have put an ID called map, and this is where I want to have this map. And that's what we're referring to right there. Okay, so we're going to open this up again, and I'm going to open some curly brackets because we need to define some things for our map to work. And the two variables that you need to define, first of all, it is center, which is going to state what is going to be the center of our map. And for that, we need to provide a latitude and also a longitude. And the second thing that we need to specify is a zoom level of our map. So this determines how zoomed in the map is going to be when we open it. And I'm just going to set that to 8 for the initial one. All right, and after this function, we can close it. And just to be sure, I'm already going to initialize map here. So I'm going to say let map, and then later on, this is going to be replaced by this. And all the way on the bottom here, the last thing that I need to add is window.initMap, and it's going to be equal to initMap, and that is our function. Okay, so this function is now complete, but we have left out the latitude and the longitude. So I'm just going to go to the documentation, and I'm going to check. Yeah, here they specified a standard latitude and longitude. So I'm just going to use the same ones for our initial map. All right, so now this function is complete. And another thing that we need to do, which is actually quite important, we need to define a height and a width of our map holder and for our map. Because if you don't do that, your map will not show up on your canvas. So I'm going to go to my main.css, and I'm going to start by defining a height and a width of my map holder. So I'm just going to say that the height can be equal to 500 pixels, and the width, as far as I'm concerned, can be 100%. And I'm going to do the same for our map ID. And here I'm just going to state that the height can be the maximum of our map ID. So we can do it like this. All right, and these are all the changes that we need to make to put our map inside of our application. So let's see whether we can already have it visible inside of our app. So we're back in our application, and now I can click to go to the map, and hopefully our map will show up. All right, so you can see already that it is here. We can move it around. We can zoom in, zoom out. Can we even do the street view as well? We can even do the street view here as well. Really nice. I think we picked quite a nice location here as well. And this is how you put a map into your application. Now there are quite some things that you can change to your maps configuration. I'm just going to show a few right here. So the first thing that we also already set is the zoom level. I can change this zoom level, so I can put it to 1. And as you will see in my application, this will result in the map being fully zoomed out. But I can also go in much more detail and put it to 12. We will be much closer to our point on the map. So you can kind of play around with the default that you want to show. And I'm going to go for now with 4. In addition, if you go, let's refresh it again. If you can see here, we can pick whether it's a map and whether it's a satellite, but we can also enter a default for that inside of our code. So if I go to the documentation here, you can see under concepts that you have map types. And under map types, the options are roadmap, satellite, hybrid, or terrain. Right now it is by default on map, but if I add the map type and I set it to satellite and save that, it should go and display the satellite by default. But for us, the real thing is about adding markers on this map. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing next. And the first thing to do is making sure that the locations that we have are being passed to our template. So I'm going to go to my code in my views.py file. And under here, I'm going to define the locations that I want to display. And I'm just going to call them eligible locations because I don't want to display them all. And this is going to be equal to locations.objects.filter. And I only want to have the locations that we have geocoded so far, because in my models.py file, those are the only ones that will have the coordinates. So the only ones that will display a location. So I'm going to state that I only want to see the ones where place ID is null is equal to false. And why do I do that? Well, I can go to my database right here, and you can see that we're storing the latitude, the longitude, and the place ID. And as long as there's a place ID, I know for sure that there's also a latitude and a longitude. So I only want to see the records where that place ID is not null. Okay, the next thing we'll do is we're going to loop through these locations and add them to a list. So first things first, I'm going to create a list called locations. It's going to be empty for now. And then I'm going to loop through my eligible locations by doing for a in eligible locations. And there we're going to define a variable called data. And inside of there, I want to get the latitude, which is a.lat. I want to get the longitude, which is a.lng. And I want to have a name. And that is going to be equal to a.name. And now for each of these records, I want to add them to my locations list. So I am going to do locations.append. I'm going to append data. So now every time it finds the record, it's going to add it to our list. And now I want to also get this list to my template. And we're doing that by passing it into our context. And you can see here I'm referring to latitude, longitude, and name. And these are also the columns that are in our database. All right, so our locations are now being loaded into our template. And the first thing that I'm going to do inside of my template is define these locations. So in my function initMap, I'm going to create a variable. And this is going to be equal to, well, I'm going to name it. Sorry, I'm going to name my variable locations. And this is going to be equal to double brackets, my locations. And I'm going to put a save setting in there as well. All right. To get these locations as a marker on my map, I need to loop through them and create a marker for each one of them. So underneath the map that we've defined here, I can do locations dot for each, and this will make sure that we do something for each location. I'm going to define a function, and in there again I'm going to specify location because that's what we're just going to call it for now. And then I'm going to open some squirrely brackets, so it's going to look like this, and I can define that I want to create a variable called marker. And the function there is new google.maps.marker. So it's going to define that it needs to create a new marker. I'm going to open brackets and open squirrely brackets into there. And for that marker, I need to know the position. And that position needs to be the same as it's defined right here. So in position, I can state that my latitude is going to be equal to location.lat. And I can specify that my longitude is going to be equal to location.longitude. If you call this one data, you would take this and just do data.lng or lat. It's just how you want to call it in there. Next to the position, we also need to define where we need to place it. Where we're going to place it on our map called map. And this just enables us to place it on this variable right here. And we can also state a title for the ones that we have. And I'm going to say that the title is equal to location.name. And I think that this is all that we need to do to display our markers on the map. So I'm going to save this and we're going to check out what my code looks like now. So we're back on our map and it appears that I've made a small error. So I'm going to go back here and see what I did wrong. So I can see in my views I made a small mistake. Place ID underscore should be a double underscore. So I'm going to save that again, and let's go back to our code and see whether it works now. So I'm just going to restart it. Okay, and now our map is showing up, but we don't see the markers yet, and that is probably so you can see we now have another issue right here. So you can see that the position, that our latitude and our longitude are not numbers. So I need to go back to my code. I'm going to go back to my views again, and here I'm going to specify the variable called float. So now float basically is a decimal number. So now if I save it again, and my latitude and longitude are now numbers as they're being passed to my template. If I now refresh it and I zoom out, yes, I see two markers on our map. So luckily it is working the way that we expect now. So that's also a good one for you guys. If you don't see your markers or there's something wrong, just go to inspect, go to your console, and over there it will probably show you some kind of an indication of what is going wrong. The last thing that I want to do is I want to create a square above it, or kind of a message above it that tells me what this is. Because right now, of course, I can zoom in all the way here, and then I will probably find that this is the stadium from Nakpurera, which is the Radverles Stadium. But I just want to click on it and get that information by default. Another thing that I also want to do, because I just refreshed my page, I also want to make sure that the center of the map is no longer in Australia, because my markers are going to be nowhere near that. I want the focus of the map to be on the first marker that I have displayed there, so it does not go here by default, and make sure that my users don't see anything. So back to our code, and we're going to go to our map.html file, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to replace these ones with the coordinates of my first location. And I will do that by first creating a variable, which I will call first location. And I will set that to locations and then square brackets 0, which will get the first one from locations. And then under let, I can say I want to have first location dot let, and under g here I can do first location dot g. Of course, you need to define it as lng like this. And now going back to our app, you can see once it loads, it will put this first one in the middle of the screen. So that's very nice. All right, next up I want to have that info window, so we can immediately see what is going on when we click it. So to do that, I can define a variable called info window, and it's just going to be empty for now. And then inside of our for each one, we're going to create a new variable after marker, and we call that info window, but not with a capital. We're just going to call this, and we use the function new google.maps. So you can see a recurring theme here, dot info window. We need to open those brackets, and we also need a squirrely bracket open there. And then the content of that window is going to be location.name. And then underneath here, so let's make it look a little bit better like this. Underneath that variable, I'm going to put info window, which is this one, this list here. And I need to say dot push. And the thing that we are going to push is our variable info window. So this will make sure that this gets pushed to our map. And then I also need to define that something needs to happen when we click it. So when we click the marker, I want the text to be displayed, but other ones I don't want that. So I say underneath here that marker dot add listener, and I'm going to open this one, and then when I click something, I want to have a function. Again, I'm going to open something here, and in there I'm going to specify info window dot for each, and then function, and then I'm going to do IW for info window, open it up again here, and I say IW dot close. This will make sure that once it's opened with a click, we can then also close it with a click, which is going to be quite important because you don't want them to be open all the time, because that's going to be a mess. Last thing that I need to define there is I need to say info window dot open, and that one needs to be on the map, and it also needs to do something with the marker. So it's quite important because we need to know which map we need to take and where we need to get the markers from, and that's going to link back to the things that we've written there before. And that is all that we need to do there. So I'm also going to close this one up here and this one up there. And now this should work. So when we go to our maps now, and I'm going to refresh the screen, and I can click on it and you will see the location, and I can also close it again with the X button there. So that's quite nice. So now my users can see a marker, they can click on it to see exactly what it is, and also close it again. And of course, you're able to specify more information inside of this. And you will also see that the other functionalities will now nicely tie in with what we're doing. So for example, if I now also geocode the Sanmames, what we did earlier inside of our application. Okay, so that's now geocoded, and I go to my map. It now takes 3 item points because it only takes the ones that we have geocoded so far. And just for the sake of it, I'm going to change back the map type to what it was by default because I like it better. And that is all for today, and also for this tutorial series. In this series, we've shown you how to configure the Google Maps API in the Google Cloud Platform and in your application. We've showed you how you can geocode address strings to coordinates, and also how you can calculate distances between 2 places, and now also how to display markers on a map. Now, yeah, same goes for a lot of things inside of Python Django. You can customize a lot of things you want, so I would like to refer to you to the Google documentation if you want more information on that. Yeah, for the rest, I want to thank you for watching this video and the tutorial series, and I hope to see you in my future videos. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.